Hi there and welcome back to another episode at Station Road. Now today's video is a little bit different and it's actually revisiting a review I did on a locomotive, this one down here, about 4 months ago. So I think from memory my review of the locomotive, and there's a link up in the corner there for that, was pretty favourable, but there was one sticking point, and that was the locomotive derailing on a specific section of track on my layout, which was an inclined curve, and my conclusion to that was that the locomotive was simply just too heavy and was creating friction in the pivot point of the bogies. So with the help of one of my viewers and a chap by the name of Clive Jolly, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, he posted a comment a few weeks back on the video for this review of the locomotive and gave me a link to another channel, and that channel is called Melchester Model Railway, and that's operated by a chap named Clive. Now he investigated the issues with his Deltic locomotive in doing exactly the same thing, and of course after I watched that video and did a bit of further investigation, I found that there was actually a number of us who have issues with the Deltic 55 derailing on certain track work, or even derailing under load or on inclines. So with that in mind, I pursued the idea of modifying the kinematic couplings, which appear to be the issue that surrounds these derailments, and I'm pretty sure Accurascale are aware of this and they are remedying it, or it already has been remedied. So rather than sending my locomotive halfway around the world back to the UK, I thought would have a go at doing these modifications myself, and it is based on what Clive put up on his channel, and he referenced a image that was submitted to RM Web. I'm not actually sure who posted the image, but I'm borrowing it just to give the example of how he modified the kinematic system so that it would actually operate smoother and not jam in certain positions on any track work. So basically this video is actually going into how I went about doing these modifications on my Class 55 Deltic, and of course at the end we can actually see the outcome of this modification and whether it's made any difference. So I think one of the key sticking points with doing any modifications, particularly to this locomotive, is the sheer delicateness of the locomotive and all its detail, and also the possibly inability to be able to gain access to the inside of the locomotive in order to do anything, add crew, change speakers, things like that, because of the chains that link between the body and the bogies. Now in this video I'm going to attempt to actually modify these kinematic couplings without having to remove the body. So let's see what I got up to. So as I mentioned, I think I've found a way we can access this kinematic coupling without having to remove the body, which of course also actually would involve detaching these chains as well in order to lift the body off. So the first thing to do is we'll take out the coupling from its NEM pocket, and if we sort of take a closer look in here, I might just have to shift this over. There's some components in here, and fortunately they're all screwed in. So firstly there's the buffer beam, which is screwed in to the frame, and then the actual entire kinematic housing, that is also actually screwed in, and by swiveling the bogie around you can actually get access to these screws. So that's hopefully an easier way of getting to this coupling. So they're just little Phillips screws, and of course with this particular model we have to be absolutely careful with not breaking any of the details on this model, because it is just so delicate. So you do have to be very careful where you're putting your hands. So that's the 2 screws out of the buffer beam, and for a pair of tweezers, this can be gently jiggled out of its position, and that's the buffer beam out. So that's one component out of the way, and then directly underneath this NEM pocket for the kinematic coupling there's a screw here, just in there, and then if we push the bogie aside there's a screw here on this side, and then there's an equivalent screw on the other side. So if we undo these screws, so that's the screws out, and then very carefully ease out the kinematic coupling, because one thing you don't want to do is lose the spring somewhere. So there is the housing for the coupling, and the spring has actually come detached from this component, but you can see here the wee spring which attaches to a wee lug popping up there. But if we just ease this coupling out, and then we can see the shape of this housing, and you can see this V section in here which the coupling is supposed to slide either side to. So this is the component that I've seen in some other videos which I mentioned, where they've modified this to ease the coupling movement and to stop it from jamming on this rather sort of pointed V shape. So we'll go ahead and modify this very, very carefully, and hopefully this will make the difference. So based on the discussions and also the help received from the original review that I did of the Class 55 Deltic, it involves smoothing this V shape off the kinematic housing. So my thoughts were maybe to use one of these, so it's actually just a vertical blade, and we're just going to chop off that pointy bit at the end, and then using some files and various different files here we can then smooth this off. So we'll see how this goes. So just with a knife we've just trimmed that off a little bit, so now it's just a case of filing that smooth. And of course one of the screw mounts is actually right in this little bit here, so I've got to be careful really not to go anywhere near that, because of course if you try and tighten up the screw it's just going to split the plastic. So it's quite a delicate operation. It's a pity that this has to be done in order to get the locomotive working correctly, but I have heard, or it has been mentioned, that Accurascale have addressed or are addressing this particular issue with the coupling. Right, so that is the modified coupling, and if we get the other coupling here, that's the difference now that we can see between the two. So I'll work on the other one, and then we'll get to the point where we have to try and get these things back into the locomotive. So what I thought I'd do to get this kinematic housing back onto the locomotive, I've loaded the spring back on, which you can just see here, but what I've done is just wedged a little bit of blue tack in under here between the NEM pocket and the base housing, so it's kind of very gently holding the whole thing together, but it's quite sort of delicate, so I'm hoping that that will sort of keep it all together so I can insert it in, get two of these screws in, and then of course I can remove the blue tack and get the final screw in. So we'll just see how that goes. Actually, what I'm going to have to do, slight change of plan, is I need to position this coupling to one side. So we're going to have to take it back out and move it. Right, so we've now got it positioned to one side. It's just that if it's in the centre, then you can't really move the bogie out of the way to get to any of the screw holes. So give this a go. This is certainly a very, very tricky operation, I can tell you that. Right, so I don't know, we're gonna, I can sort of feel it catching on something, but we'll see how it goes. I think before I actually put the other one in, I'm actually going to put it back on the track and do another test on that curve and just see what happens. And interestingly, while this coupling is actually off at the other end, down here, we've got nothing on this end at the moment, is I'll switch the locomotive around the other direction and actually just try it with nothing at this end and see what happens. So we'll reattach the buffer beam, because that is going to potentially factor in some of possibly some reasoning behind it catching. So we'll slot this back in here. So when I was actually removing the buffer beam out of here, there's actually these tiny little wee, I think they're guard irons or something, I think what they might be called, on the end of the bogie, and there's one just here. And interestingly, I found one, this one here, was actually inside underneath, so I don't know how long it had been like that, and another one is just missing altogether, so maybe that's on the layout somewhere. So these guard irons, they're not part of the moulding, they're actually a separately fitted part, and I can actually see some glue in here, so whether or not it's broken off and it's been glued on in the factory as a repair job is, I'm not quite sure, so I suspect these are probably going to break off the two that are remaining. So we'll just screw this buffer beam detail back in, and then we can get it on the layout and just see what happens. Right, we'll put a NEM coupling back in here as well, because that's going to need to be there for the entire test. So, as you saw from that footage, we have partial success. So, it seems the bogie doesn't completely come off, or the wheels don't completely trip off the rail at one end of the bogie as they were doing previously, but you can still see a little bit of a jolt and a slight subtle thump where it's obviously still sticking a little bit. And then, of course, when you saw me actually switch the locomotive around the other way, where there is no kinematic coupling, like completely removed, and there seems to be no issues at all. So there needs to be no jolt or clunk or anything like that. So I guess just confirming, as everyone else has discovered, that it is the couplings that are causing the derailment issue. So I've still got this one to do, but what I'm actually going to do as well is just on the end of this, you can kind of see a very sort of pointy piece as well, and that actually slots in around what is now actually a smooth curve. So I might actually modify that as well, like take that little piece off and see what that does as well. So we're just going to trim it off and see what happens. Right, so it's probably a bit tricky to see, but I've taken off that little bit of a flange that was protruding across the top, and it sort of had a slot in it, so that's where it would have been originally meant to guide along that sort of V shape in the housing component. So I'm just going to see what that does. Right, so that seems to be moving okay. So whether or not that further modification to this end of the kinematic coupling component makes further improvement. Right, so now it's a case of putting in our buffer beam. Right, so we'll pop the coupling on now, and then let's take it back over the layout. So now I've got to identify that that is the end that's had a further modification. So what can I reference on this locomotive? So there's no, I don't think there's any significant way I can actually tell that that is the end. So what I'm actually going to do is remove this chain off this end, because I'm taking them off anyway, because they're just going to keep coming out. So that's the chain off at that end. So the one that has no chains on it is the modified end. Right, so it was a bit of a mixed bag in terms of the results, depending on the direction and depending on which modification worked better. Now, I've come to the conclusion that the initial modification, which was just removing the pointy bit on the housing component, worked the best, whereas when I did some further modification to the actual armature that comes out from there, where there was that other little pointy bit that I trimmed off as well, I don't think that really made any difference. Possibly it's made it a little bit worse, and it sometimes would trip off the track, come back on again, and it would tend to seem to do that at a higher speed. So it's still a little bit of an iffy situation. It's possibly overall a little bit better by modifying that kinematic coupling the housing component, but it's still just a little bit off. So I've come to the conclusion what I'm actually going to do. I was originally thinking, well, I'd like to be able to have couplings at both ends, but a lot of my locomotives, what I do is just have a coupling at one end, and that allows the driving end or cab one or whatever it might be to actually have some buffer beam detail and so forth, and not have a big ugly coupling and NEM pocket poking out. So what I've actually done at this end is the end that was probably the most iffy, I've actually just left the kinematic housing completely out, and when I run that, it just runs spot on. You don't see the bogie jerking and jumping and trying to leave the rails. So this will be the driving end of the locomotive, and yeah, I should hopefully have some worry-free running with this locomotive now. I've yet to actually test this locomotive under a load, so I'm hoping it's going to be alright for that. So there we have it. I certainly think it has made a bit of a difference. One of the things that I have noticed with the modification to the kinematic system is the bogie doesn't completely leave the rail like it used to, so you can still see it jump, or it sort of seems like it's getting stuck, but it doesn't actually completely come off the rail. So clearly it has made a bit of a difference, but it wasn't still quite good enough for me. So as you saw, I have taken off one of the kinematic systems at one end, which will be the leading end of the locomotive, and of course I'll put some buffer beam detail at that end so it will look a little bit more prototypical. So I have to make one apology, and that is to Chris. Your name is not Clive. Clive was the guy that actually commented in my video. So Chris, many apologies, and actually while I'm here, I thought it was a very good informative video that you actually put together for the Accurascale model. And to everyone else, I've popped a link down below, of course, to Chris's channel, and there's of course also a link to the original Accurascale review that I did about 4 months ago. So we'll leave it there for this episode. The next episode coming up, of course, we'll be getting back to the raised goods yard area and the town scene or street scene and other bits and bobs relating to the previous videos that I've been compiling. So once again, take care everyone. Do look after yourselves. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you next time. Bye for now.